Everyone knows the story of Chanukah, but visiting the caves where the Maccabee partisans lived and seeing the valley where Judah Maccabee was slain in battle really brings things home. We are visiting with Rabbi Yehuda HaKohen, who lives just a few hundred yards in his small village in the Gofna Hills, just outside Beitel.
From the time that the revolt broke out in Modin, obviously Matityahu and his sons couldn't stay in Modin because the Syrian Greeks would return and massacre them. So they right away left to the hills of Gofna. They came here and they established their headquarters for the first few years of the revolt. In fact, the Adon Matityahu Hashmonai died on this mountain, roughly a year into the revolt. He put his second son Shimon in charge of the family and his third son Judah Maccabee, in charge of the war. And this was the partisan camp of the Maccabees until the liberation of Jerusalem that we celebrate on Chanukah. Following the liberation of Jerusalem, our headquarters was moved to the capital, but by coincidence, this also happens to be the site of Judah Maccabee's last battle. This was the Battle of Bachiris, where Judah fought 22,000 Greeks. That's 20,000 mercenaries plus 2,000 cavalry with only 800 fighters. It was right there, and that is where Judah Maccabee fell in battle. If their guard duty was anything like our guard duty today in the army, you could imagine some farmer or tanner or school teacher turned guerrilla fighter doing 8 hours of guard duty in this tower, not knowing if he didn't just make the biggest mistake of Jewish history following Matityahu and his sons into war with the Syrian Greeks, not knowing if a squad of elephants isn't going to come from around that mountain and decimate their camp. And for me to live on this mountain under Jewish sovereignty 2,000 years later very much makes me feel like a character in a later chapter of the same story that they were characters in.
It doesn't take much imagination to imagine what it would be like standing on this tower here and watching guard and seeing the battle take place, or how do you suspect that would have played out? You had a guard here, and then they saw the army coming over the hills. What?
This was no longer our headquarters once that battle took place. We had already moved our headquarters to Jerusalem. I think it's just by coincidence that Judah ended up meeting Bachiris here. It actually, to this day, it still puzzles me and troubles me that Judah, with only 800 men, met the army of Bachiris out there in an open plain when he could have lured them into the mountains as he was prone to do previously and catch them.
He's a guerrilla warfare guy. Why do you think that is?
I know there was a principle at stake. First of all, he was specifically urged to retreat, but he refused because he didn't want the Greeks to see Jews running away. His forces were depleted because the Hasidim, a group that made up the bulk of his armed forces, were more interested in fighting for Rosh Chodesh and learning Torah and Shabbat and Brit Milah, but not necessarily for political self-determination. The Maccabees decided to fight on, even though the Greeks were willing to allow us to live according to our own ways, because the Maccabees held that it's also a halakha to free our land from foreign rule.
The odds were definitely not stacked in his favor on that one. Wow, incredible. So you suspect that these 20,000 soldiers for the Greek army came over this hill over here, just on the horizon, or they came through a valley?
There are opinions that they maybe trapped him there, but somehow he was exposed in the open plain, had the choice to retreat or stay and fight, and he decided to stay and fight, even though it was pretty obvious he wasn't going to make it. There was a point to make.
So he's died up in Kiddush Hashem in that way.
He died the Maccabee. He definitely fell as the Maccabee.
And here we are today. Pretty incredible.
Let's go somewhere with less wind. We're now heading down the side of the mountain. There are some caves where fighters slept, planned their battles, met for meetings, and caves where they had their olive presses, where they made their olive oil or their wine. There are a lot of different caves up here. That's most likely a cave where people slept. It looks like a small cave.
Here we go. Wow. Whoa, watch your step. Oh, snapper. This is nice and cool, and probably seek refuge from the hot desert sun. There's seats here. Maybe this is where people slept, probably. Oh, here's another one.
Here's another one.
Where are we?
This is clearly one of the larger caves, if not the largest cave on the mountain, in the mountain. We see that there are a number of olive presses here. This is where the fighters made their olive oil. We see these benches here. It's also likely that this was used as a Beit Knesset, which would have been both a place of tefillah and a place of community meetings. As far as we know, the Maccabees organized their partisan camp. They had the challenge of taking a bunch of, teachers and farmers and turning them into a fearsome guerrilla force. And in many ways, we can say that they created what we today know to be guerrilla war, using the land as a weapon, filling the skies with arrows, what the Greeks would call Judean rain, which would then come falling down on them and forcing the Syrian Greeks into narrow passes where they couldn't use the phalanx, couldn't organize according to their training. And the Maccabees and their fighters would just come down from the mountainsides and kill them all and take their weapons, take their gold, whatever they had. And this went on for years, of us using this form of warfare that they just hadn't encountered before. This would have been one of the main places of meetings for Matityahu and his sons and their officers, and then later under the command of Yehuda, the officers of the war. And probably also a place of learning Torah, place of tefillah, and a place of strategizing the war.
Is this like the largest cave in the area?
This is the largest cave on this mountain, or in this mountain, you could say. Like the Gofna Hills are full of caves like this. You see here these olive presses, and down the mountain we have an ancient wine press from that period. We know that to have been where the Maccabees made their wine.
Somehow today, Chanukah has morphed into a commercialized holiday of presents, probably an attempt to include Jews in a non-Jewish holiday myth, but a big jolly fictional man climbing down everyone's chimney each winter. Chanukah is still a time for song and praising God, but walking these paths on this particular hill really does hit home. The feeling one gets while sitting in the actual caves that house this heroic partisan army is sobering from all of the fried foods, donuts, and potato latkes. There were real battles, and real people died fighting for our religious freedom, for Torah observance, and for national independence and self-determination. We all take for granted on some level those same religious freedoms every day. Chanukah is an epic story of the Jewish struggle for religious freedom and national independence from the oppressive Greeks and the Hellenized Jews who tried to dominate and assimilate the Jewish people into a foreign culture.
This is an ancient burial cave.
Who's buried there?
Most likely one of the fighters who fell in battle. We know it not to have been Matityahu or his sons because we know specifically that they were buried near Modin.
Wow, this is beautiful, man.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. My backyard.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by Michael Shepsis, a Boston-based member of our digital community who practices immigration law in the United States. Thanks, Mike. What's up, tribe? We're committed to intrigue, inspire, and inform by sharing important but untold stories, untold perspectives, and untold worlds. If you would like to help us produce more videos like these, please consider going to tribejournal.org and joining our digital online community. Thank you in advance.